"This is my final gift to you," said my husband, thrusting the divorce papers at me. "I've decided to remarry. Thank you for being an ATM all these years." My longtime husband turned out to be a terrible person. This is the story of my revenge. My name is Susan. I am turning 50 this year. Actually, tomorrow is a special day. We have been living in debt for a long time, but we are finally going to pay it off. My husband and I worked really hard together on this. We got married 20 years ago when I was 30 and he was 35. He ran a liquor store inherited from his deceased parents while I was a corporate employee. We met through a mutual acquaintance and started dating with marriage in mind. I had one worry though. What if he asked me to help run the liquor store? At the time I was working as a financial planner, consulting individuals and corporations on insurance and finance. I was earning a decent salary at 30 and loved my job. I was even studying for more certifications. But during his proposal, my husband said, "I know you're working hard to get the certification, and I want to support that. The store has employees and part-timers, so we'll manage. You should chase your dreams." Those words made me decide to marry him. I wanted to support a man who was always so generous and on my side. Initially, we managed our marriage well by focusing on our respective careers. Or so I thought. About a year into the marriage, my husband went to the store and I had a day off. It was when I was relaxing at home. While cleaning under the bed, I found a bunch of papers. It had only been 6 months since we moved here, so why were there so many papers in such a small space? I picked one up and unfolded it, and it was a final notice. The total debt under my husband's name was a whopping $200,000. $200,000. It wasn't $20. My head was spinning. Why did he hide such a huge debt? I confronted him that day. "What is this debt all about?" I asked. "It's not what you think. It's the debt my parents left with the store." The situation was like this. The debt was associated with the liquor store, not personal debt. It appears that my husband's parents were the ones who borrowed the money, but when he took over the store, over the years they also inherited the debt from the store. The property was used as collateral, so he didn't want to disinherit it. I understood it wasn't his personal debt, but it couldn't be ignored either. But a final notice. "Aren't you paying it monthly?" "I do, but business revenue varies each month. Some months I can't pay. I have to pay my employees and part-timers, so I asked for a deferment. Those notices are from those times." His reasoning seemed sound, but delaying payments didn't seem right. The notice even had a final warning written on it. "I didn't want to worry, Susan, but it's really okay. The store is doing fine, and we haven't been kicked out of our house, right?" That's true, but then my husband said something to me as I looked at him anxiously. "If you're so concerned, why don't you help pay off the debt with your salary? You earn quite a bit, right? So that's how it's going to be. It's not like it's my store, though." But my husband continued, "Because spouses help each other, right? My debt is Susan's debt, too. But to just spring this on me all of a sudden. You're okay with my store going under. Do you know how many people rely on it?" His words made me realize something. Indeed, his liquor store had become indispensable to our community. Located in the suburbs with few convenience stores or supermarkets nearby, his store was different from the typical liquor store, offering fresh meat and fish and even delivery services. I'd visited the store a few times and it was always bustling, with customers often expressing their gratitude for its existence. I've always admired how seriously my husband took his business, working tirelessly. I couldn't bear the thought of his store closing. Being married meant supporting each other in all circumstances. It seemed only natural as his wife to help him in his time of need. "All right, I'll contribute as much as I can from my salary each month. You focus on keeping the store running." Though I could provide financial support, only he could run the store. And it felt good to be relied upon by him. But this decision led to a change in my husband. About 3 years after I started covering the debt, my husband began coming home late more frequently. "What's going on?" "It's so late and you reek of alcohol." "Just business socializing." "Susan, did you make this month's payment?" His attitude became more domineering. "I paid it last week." "Why are you asking?" "My store's survival depends on you." keep making the payments, okay? Recently, he often said such things when he's drunk. His words, often slurred from alcohol, started to bother me. It was as if repaying the debt was taken for granted. And then there's John, that lucky guy with his third kid already. John, a classmate of my husband. He ran his own business too, with his wife helping at the store. About that, I have something to say. I decided to share a thought I'd kept to myself. Don't you think it's about time we had kids? But his response was cold. It's the busiest time for the store, and with the debt, now is not the time for such things. Your debt, not ours, but I held back. But John has kids, why can't we? John's situation is different. Both he and his wife's parents are around, and she works at the store. We're not like them. I was at a loss for words. My thoughts that I wanted to have children after getting married were completely shattered. So, we can't do anything until the debt is paid off? Yeah, pretty much. If you earn more and pay off the debt sooner, I'll think about it. His smirk filled me with resentment, yet I felt an urgent need to pay off the debt as soon as possible. It's scary. Even though it's an unreasonable demand, it seemed urgent at that time. From then on, I worked relentlessly for my husband. I acquired more certifications, passed promotion exams, and earned far more than my peers, making extra payments on the debt. But the debt didn't seem to decrease much. Before I knew it, I was over 40 and had to give up on having children. But I was okay because I had my husband. I could keep going for him as he relied on me. I was still happy believing that. However, my husband's return home became later and later, sometimes not until morning. I got caught up with work at the store, and before I knew it, it was morning. I had to entertain a client, and suddenly it was time for the first train. Seeing him work so hard for the store made me feel like I had to do my part as his wife. His efforts fueled mine. Then, the day to finish the repayments arrived. Tomorrow is the last payment day. I had sacrificed many luxuries for this debt, but from tomorrow that would be over. I could spend my hard-earned money as I wished. Come to think of it, since getting married, we never really traveled or dined out, always mindful of money. We were still in our 50s. I wanted to start enjoying those things. On the repayment completion day, I took a day off. I cooked an extravagant dinner, prepared wine, and even baked my husband's favorite chocolate cake. I planned to celebrate the end of our repayments together. When my husband returned from work, I laid out everything on the dining table and said, "Finally, these 20 years felt both long and short. We made it, honey." But my husband just trembled and looked down. Was he so happy he was crying? That's what I thought, but then he burst into an uncharacteristic loud laughter. What? What's going on? Immediately after, the man who was supposed to be my husband said something unbelievable. "You're no longer needed. Thanks for these 20 years. You paid off all the debt, freeing me. So, thanks for your efforts, but I don't need you anymore." What do you mean? I was confused and asked my husband. He then pulled out something from his pocket. "Here, my final gift to you." The words divorce papers appeared before my eyes. He continued smugly, "I've decided to remarry. You're too old and useless now. Thanks for being my ATM all these years." Wait, remarry? Have you been cheating all this time? Thinking back, he was often out late for work or socializing. Could it be that while I was working hard to pay off the debt, he was being unfaithful? But his expression remained smug. Me unfaithful? I've already found my next wife. I've been waiting for this day, for you to finish paying off the debt. Tears welled up in my eyes at his cruel words. The feast I prepared blurred before my eyes, adding to my sorrow. "So get out quickly." He extended the divorce papers to me. My sadness and emptiness turned into rising anger. "Understood. You won't regret this?" I managed to say. "Regret? Why would I regret divorcing an old woman like you?" Old woman, huh? If I'm an old woman, then he's definitely an old man. I wonder how long he plans on pretending to be young. His delusions helped me regain my composure, and I took the divorce papers. I'll hold on to these for now. I'll be in touch. With that, I gathered my essentials and left the house. Who would have thought 20 years of marriage would end so abruptly? Alone, I finally let out tears of emptiness and frustration. I hired a lawyer for the divorce negotiations. And I also engaged a private investigator to look into my husband's supposed new partner, and I received their report. I had the lawyer send the proposed settlement to my husband. He contacted me immediately. "Susan, what's this document?" He was so furious, I could imagine his face turning red even over the phone. In contrast, I remained calm. "It's a divorce settlement. Is there a problem?" "Of course there is. This part about debt repayment. Why do I have to pay you back?" He was in a frenzy, shouting, "This is insane. It doesn't make sense." He was referring to the part about repayment of debts incurred during marriage. Essentially, it was about him repaying the debt I had covered for him. "Why? I was repaying that as a favor to you, wasn't I? Why are you bringing up the past now?" "What are you trying to say?" "I paid it as your wife, but now that we're divorcing, it's a different story." "So that regret you mentioned earlier was about this. Are you only realizing it now?" When my husband first mentioned divorce, I immediately thought of making him repay these debts. Dealing with insurance and finance professionally, I often hear stories from a variety of customers because of my job. Sometimes it's about divorce and inheritance issues. Thanks to that, I knew not to sign the divorce papers without consulting a lawyer first. The amount I covered for him, including interest, was over $300,000. I intended to claim it all back. He was pale, finally grasping the reality, completely taken aback by my firm stance and the lawyer's document. He probably thought he could kick out his wife without any alimony, naive as he was. "There's no way I have that kind of money." "Really? Then why not sell the store? If I do that, I'll have nothing left." "Are you serious? You're only 55, you can still work." "How can you say that?" I felt it was pointless to continue this conversation, but there was one last thing I needed to confirm. "By the way, what happened with the remarriage?" That's none of your business." His sudden change in tone made me burst into laughter. "I see. Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. Good luck with that." As I was about to hang up, he suddenly pleaded, "Susan, wait. The remarriage is off. I want to start over with you." He was desperately clinging to me, but I had the last word before ending the call. "Start over? Don't make me laugh. I refuse to think I spent 20 years with this man. Maybe it looks foolish to others, but until this divorce came up, I did respect him to some extent. Watching him work hard for his store and customers, that's why I supported him. After 20 years, it turns out he was just a foolish man. The remarriage talk was nothing but his own fantasy. The truth was that my husband jokingly asked a teenage student who was working part-time, "Hey Emily, you're cute. Want to be my wife?" To which Emily jokingly replied, "Well, if you let me be a housewife, I might consider it." This led my husband to mistakenly think she was serious. Emily, who thought the idea of marrying my husband, who was nearly 40 years older, was nothing but a joke, was naturally terrified when she realized he was serious. Her parents got involved as my husband persistently pursued the idea of remarriage, which almost led to a lawsuit. When I saw the report from the private investigator, I laughed so hard I thought my stomach would twist. In retrospect, my husband was often coming home late. I had thought he was just really dedicated to his work, but it was quite the opposite. He was frequently seen at bars and lounges hitting on young women. Moreover, I'm surprisingly popular with young people. I'm a businessman, so I can get along with anyone, and we can get along easily. I look quite young, don't you think? It is said that he was driving the girl crazy. In my husband's eyes, I was nothing more than an old wife, just an ATM to him. But his gross miscalculations were almost comical, leading him to become almost like a stalker, nearly causing police incidents. It might have been better if he had cheated. He's a disappointing man who never even got to the stage of having an affair. Why did he decide to remarry someone younger than me in the first place? Apparently it's because his friend John had a grandchild. The story I heard from John was like that. It was like that. He suddenly wanted kids of his own after seeing my grandchild, despite his wife having paid off all his debts. I scolded him, but I never imagined he would do something like this. John was speechless. I'm glad I do not have to spend my old age with such a man. I muttered to myself. After that, I divorced my husband. While marital expense sharing is not always clear-cut, there was room for negotiation. But he seemed resigned just at the mention of a lawyer's claim. It is amazing that such a spineless man managed his business for so long. He sold the store to pay me back. Luckily, by the time he decided to sell, the few employees and part-timers had already left, so no misfortune befell them. The customers, having heard the reason for the sale was to pay back his ex-wife, were all taken aback. The story of his self-inflicted downfall after confronting me with divorce spread throughout the community. Even if he had not sold the store, the bad reputation might have impacted his business, so maybe it was for the best. The money from the sale was not enough to cover what he owed me, so now he is juggling day jobs to continue payments. Sometimes I get voicemails from him saying I was wrong, can we start over? I was out of my mind back then. It is all because John flaunted his grandchild. Unfortunately, even blocking his number does not stop him from calling from different places, so I had my lawyer warn him that any further contact would lead to a legal complaint. That stopped him. He was still extremely afraid of lawyers. Now about my current job. I started working at a matchmaking agency. Wanting to try something new, at 50, I joined a friend who was setting up the agency just as I left my corporate job. We provide services like helping couples looking to get married and advising on financial issues and insurance in marriages. This has been very well received by our clients. Going to be together as a couple, we want to open up and have a thorough discussion from the beginning. It is very popular with such customers. My experiences have inspired me to help others avoid making the same mistakes. While my salary is slightly lower than my corporate days, I find joy in helping others find happiness every day. Having cut ties with my husband, I now work happily, helping others find their happiness.